Welcome, Make Time listeners, to season 2. I am so excited to roll this season out to you guys. And we are kicking this off with Ariel Xenia. She is a feminine movement and mindset expert who has been coaching women for more than 15 years to become their most graceful and confident selves. A former dancer and school teacher, Ariel has the perfect combination of poise and compassion to guide women on their journey to embody their feminine power. So let's make time to discover our femininity with Ariel. Ariel, welcome to the Make Time podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here.
So, Ariel, you came up on my feed like out of nowhere, which I was so happy to come across your page and to see what you're doing. And I was like, a feminine movement and mindset coach. I mean, just everything that you had on your page, I was like, I need some of that in my life.
She sent it to me and she was like, oh my God, we need to have Ariel on the podcast. And I was like, yes, amazing.
Yeah, no, it's just really about like how to command a room and how to move and getting your shoulders back. And I don't know, like moving with grace and confidence. And I just love that. It really spoke to me. I kind of felt like I really needed some of that. So will you just give our listeners just a little bit about you and what you do?
So as you said, I am a feminine movement and mindset coach. I grew up doing classical ballet, so that was my first love. And I was a school teacher for many years. So when I decided to leave the classroom, I went to my next favorite thing to teach, which is the grace and the poise, because I feel it's such a lost art. And I see so many women investing money in their appearance, hair, nails, makeup, etc., and kind of forgetting the energetic presence, which is so, so important. So I've been working with women for the last 15 years, and it has been so much fun to see the transformation in confidence that can happen just through focusing on things like body language and tapping back into the feminine, because I know a lot of women feel disconnected from that.
I love it.
I do too. Let's get into our first question. So, as a feminine movement and mindset coach, what is the most important thing you make time for and why?
So, the most important thing I make time for is pleasure. Making time for your pleasure as a woman is so important because that's where we get our radiance from as women. I meet and talk with a lot of women on a daily basis who are in a place of self-neglect because they are living in the pragmatic. So, for example, do you need to do the elegance and the poise and the grace? Not necessarily. It's an extra, right? Certainly you can just get to the destination by walking, but it's that extra bit of beauty that brings us pleasure as women that we need to make time for. So not always going for the practical, but going for the pleasure is a great way to change your energy from the inside out.
I think it's so great, because as women, I feel like for me, I can speak for myself, like I'm an executive and I'm in boardrooms all the time and I'm one of few women in those boardrooms. And I always feel like I have to be so, I don't know, like a badass in not necessarily a feminine way, right? Mm-hmm. From being a woman in business, I feel like I've had to also damper my femininity a little bit so it wasn't misconstrued and it's kind of it's not right, because we're these beautiful feminine beings, and so I think this is super interesting. I love this topic. So for our listeners at home, can you please give them 3 actionable tips on how they can make time for this?
Yes. So the first tip is to slow down, especially if you are seeking to add more grace to your life. Because when we slow down our movements, that's where we find the smooth, fluid, graceful expression. And as I said, for me, that is a source of pleasure. The grace is a source of pleasure. It's very authentic for me and for a lot of other women. And so we prioritize our pleasure and we make space and room and time for the grace by learning how to slow down. So next time you're walking into a meeting, especially as a female executive, take a breath, walk in there with feeling how good it feels in your own body to slow down and be smooth and fluid, because it's a way to kind of soothe your own energetic presence and the people around you. So simply just slowing down in your movements can bring you a lot of pleasure as a woman, to find that grace, to find that ease, and to find that flow.
I can even just see it in you now, like how you speak, how you move. I am insane. I am like, I run through the door, my energy level and just anxiousness is like 10. But, that was one of the things that I saw on your page was really about these like slow, thoughtful movements. And even, I had to do a speech the other day, and the note that I kept getting was slow it down. And I was like, I thought I was speaking very slow, but in actuality, it is truly about just slowing it all down.
If I had $1 for every time that someone told me to slow down. All right.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, because I work with women who are often in very high-powered positions, oftentimes in male-dominated industries. And I think our culture today in the West and in the US in particular has us in a place of rushing all the time. And it's really not healthy. So what I like to say, especially for women, is to slow down and find beauty in the details of your movement and beauty in the details of your life. And that's where you really get to tap into the pleasure and the ease, which is where we get our glow from. It's where we get our soft power from. And I was looking at your page, Emma, and I saw you giving some of those speeches, and you looked very poised. So it's always something that we can tap into. And sometimes we forget because of the energy around us is in such a rush that we often get caught up in it. But even now, I was a little nervous coming on today just because I was excited. So it was good energy. But part of what I've practiced is learning to slow down and soften. And I find that it gives you an advantage.
I also think for me, when I'm so speedy and going through things and talking a little too quickly, I think that has a lot to do with my lack of confidence in myself. Sometimes I think I'm just trying to speed through. It has something to do, I think, with my self-worth. I really need to work on, There's something about being able to walk into a room and own the room, feel whole and at peace with yourself, to be able to walk in and feel as if like, no, I belong in this room. And I don't know, taking a minute to settle into that. There's nothing wrong with that.
I get that. I think that
Helen's like, that's not my problem at all.
No, I mean, it is my problem. I think my problem is that I just don't give myself enough credit, and so, and what sometimes, like what I see in other people, like what we're talking about, like I have my best girlfriend, and she, so like I'm 5'2" and she's 5'5". She's not like that much taller than me, but her movements are so long and specific and she's so beautiful, and I'm always like just appreciating how lovely she is with just her movement, and so what other actionable tips can our listeners at home do to just kind of have a little bit more
femininity?
Yeah.
Femininity. So the next thing I would recommend is allowing your intuition to lead you towards the good. So a lot of times when the topic of intuition comes up, we often frame it as, making sure you're listening to your gut to protect you, right? Don't take that trip, this person has bad energy, that sort of thing. But a lot of times when I'm speaking with women, they're so disconnected from their intuition that they're not listening to it to lead them to something more joyful and more pleasurable. Helen, I see you kind of relating there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm big on intuition, and I think like the older you get, at least for myself, like I'm hearing my inner voice, and she keeps having the same conversation with me. And it's like, okay, when are you going to sit down and really hear this and make time for some action on what your intuition is telling you? Because I think, we run around, we're taking care of people. I mean, it's the whole premise of the make time movement is to just take a moment and kind of connect with these signals that you're getting to make a change or do something different for yourself. And so I think intuition is really, really key. But making the time to acknowledge, hear it, and then maybe like make that big pivot. Cause sometimes it's like moving, or it could be like something really major. So yeah, I love it.
I do too. Okay. What are you not making time for that you're going to commit to making more time for today?
So I thought about this question, and the thing that kept coming up for me was reading, because right now I'm in a place where I'm really developing my business, and I have so many books about the history of women, and I have one called The Female Brain. I like to read nonfiction and fiction. So I have several fiction books kind of stacked up, but I'm in a space right now where I'm defaulting to TikTok and YouTube because I love to learn, and I'm an auditory learner as well. But I think the balance of taking in information in a old-fashioned way, just reading on the page and being a little bit more quiet is something that I'm really desiring.
That is, I started my New Year's reading, and I hadn't picked up a book. I hate to say it, in a really long time. My mind just could not quiet down at the end of the day to pick up a book. And I started the new year reading. I went through a couple of books, and then it just stopped. But I love making time to read. When I read, it's like I'm not watching the TV. I'm not on my phone. It's just all of that stuff is intentionally off so that I can read from the page or read from the cute little Kindle book that you bought me, ebook you bought me, Helen. And I just find it so peaceful. So I love that you're making time to read, because that really, I enjoy it.
I think for me, podcasts. I'm in the car constantly. I'm always going somewhere. I'm always in airports. I'm always somewhere doing something. And I think transferring that, kind of like the scroll or like kind of just understanding what energy I'm bringing in to me, I think is really important. And then harnessing what that deliverable is. And so I'm not really a big podcast listener, which is funny because we have a podcast, but I've been listening to more, and you can kind of like really grab a topic from an expert and have it in sound bites. So if you're not getting to that book, I love reading too, but if you're not making time for the book, at least make time to get that information in another outlet.
Yeah, even like Audible is great too. Like books on tape. Is that what you call it? Is that old school?
Audio.
I love books on tape. So I usually have something playing in the background while I'm working, just to kind of almost be in my subconscious sometimes. The author, is it Miguel Ruiz, who wrote The Four Agreements? Are you familiar with that book?
I know The Four Agreements. I don't remember who is the author.
I'm pretty sure that's his name, but he had a book that I listened to several times in the background. And so, again, I love to, like Helen, take in that information from experts. But I think I could really benefit from, again, taking my own advice and slowing down and listening to my intuition to read the book maybe that doesn't have a deliverable. It's just simply enjoyable because, again, I feel like our culture is so centered around the deliverables and the actions that part of reclaiming your feminine energy is simply just doing things for pleasure's sake again.
Picking up a fiction versus a nonfiction or something on Alzheimer's and dementia.
I think this is a great time to make time for. Like, make time for pleasure.
Make time for pleasure. Yeah. My mind went to a different place when you said make time to pleasure. And
Well,
wow. Okay.
I'm glad
this is a
you
good episode.
I'm glad you said that because in my work, when I bring up this topic, a lot of people, their mind instantly goes, if I may say, to the bedroom. And that is just one form of pleasure that we experience. And so if we only have that view, and then we're spending the rest of our day accomplishing tasks and checking off our to-do list and rushing from one thing to the next, that's when we lose the beauty and the grace that we often associate with femininity that's there for us to reclaim when we turn our attention back to pleasure and like a sensual way of living in a sense. So that's why I wanted to highlight that today in our conversation. I know on my page, you see a lot of the posture and the grace, but it's truly coming from within because I find it beautiful. And just beauty for beauty's sake is something that I want to let other women know is allowed. You don't just have to throw on the leggings and rush to go do the thing and just listen to the podcast that's going to help you save more time or whatever it is. You can play the song that you love. You can take a little bit more time. You can, you know what I mean? You can find the beauty in the details of your life.
Yeah, and I think that the men or the special people in our lives aren't going to have any arguments with this, right? I think it'll affect everyone around you too.
Yes.
You know, when we're having this conversation, I was like, oh my God, my husband Tim would just love it if I just like took a minute and just, I just allowed myself a little more pleasure, anywhere for that matter, So this is great.
I love it.
Yeah.
Ariel, where can our listeners find you?
So you can find me across all platforms at Red Ruby Go-Go and TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This was beautiful.
I love this conversation, Ariel. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope that listening to our podcast has empowered you to make more time for yourself. So make sure to subscribe. Please leave a review and share with a friend who could use a healthy reminder on the importance of making time.
And make sure to keep tuning in as we will continue to bring on incredible guests to share their Make Time tips on our upcoming episodes. And come say hi over at Make Time Pod or visit us at maketimewellness.com.
Until next time, make time.